Okay. Good evening. We're going to call the meeting to order of the City of Walker Planning Commission for November 2, 2022. First item on the agenda, the review the meeting minutes for the October 19 meeting. Any comments? Corrections? Motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Scott, supported by Jason. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Next item is general public comment. We've got a couple of public hearings on the agenda, but if you had a comment about something not germane to these two and wanted to offer that for consideration, please step forward and give you your name and address. Seeing no takers, we'll move right into the first public hearing, case number 22-033, involving a property at 2648 3 Mile Road Northwest. If we could have Frank Wash, the Community Development Director, introduce the project. Thank you.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. What you see on the site plan, or see on the screen before you here, is a site plan that Black Pigeon Studios has presented to you folks, which is the original approval for those two industrial buildings. They're on 3 Mile Road, east of Indian Creek Drive, you see there. And they're proposing to lease a certain amount of space that I think is right around 6,000 square feet. I'm going to let the developer speak to the specifics. What I would like to do, if it's okay, is go through my staff report, give you some comments, and kind of frame the discussion for you, if that's all right. So we've got a staff report for you folks that's dated October 24th. And what you're looking at tonight is a special exception use for a movie studio. I gave you some of the history about why movie studios are considered special exception uses in Walker, and that dates back to what was called Hangar 42 at the old GM plant, which has been Avistar Park for years. There were some issues that went on there that were more exterior to the building. So that was really the reason that the zoning ordinance was amended to require movie studios to get a special exception permit to see if there is going to be any kind of external effects. Otherwise, if it's just interior to the building and it's a low traffic generator, maybe that's much more acceptable. So I think that's where we're going with this one, but let me roll through the staff report. The site is 2648 3 Mile Road. As I've said previously, you have two constructed buildings on this site. There's been no problems with this property from operations. Nice looking buildings, seems to be a good development. The property is zoned ML Light Industrial. There is a sliver of heavy industrial on the other side of the creek, but most of that is probably unusable. And so you have Black Pigeon Studios and owner Joe Halligan here tonight, and we'll let them introduce here in a bit what they have applied for and what they've supplied you with, which is a project application, a floor plan, the site plan you see in front of you, and then also a narrative. And what I believe they're proposing on the floor plan is 2 indoor studios, a kitchen, and a large indoor staging area. They total to be approximately 6,000 square feet. The original approval for this site was way back in 2018, for 1818, and so that gives you a little bit of a reference. There's a residential development immediately to the south, and on page 2 of the staff report you can see the relationship between this site and that residential area. So the Planning Commission is charged with reviewing the proposed special exception use for a movie studio on this site, holding a public hearing, which has been properly noticed, and then making a decision on the request. The only comments I have on the site or on the project are related to the site, interior and exterior. And based on the applicant's narrative and the other material that they've supplied to you folks, they are suggesting this will be all indoor activity, it'll be a low traffic generator, and it shouldn't have external effects. I do, for the record, I think it's probably a good practice to discuss these things with the applicant, hold a public hearing, and then make your decision to approve with conditions, deny, or table. And I say approve with conditions because on your model motion sheet we do have a couple of conditions on there relative to outdoor versus indoor impacts, and then hours of studio operation. So that's it in a nutshell. I'll hand it over back to you folks for the public hearing and for the introductions from the applicant.
Thanks, Frank. Any questions for Frank at this point? Okay. And Scott has stepped away, so it doesn't appear he has any.
Now, Scott doesn't have any comments on this because it's a interior to an improved site.
Okay,
So no engineer report on this one.
okay, thank you. If we could have the applicant come forward, if you want to add anything else in terms of the nature of the request?
I'm Joe Halligan. I'm actually the property owner. Did you press the button at the base of that? There.
I'm the property owner, and Black Pigeon Studios, I have met with them several times. I feel like they'll be a good tenant for the space. They're not allowed to do anything besides a little bit of signage on the doors outside, so there won't be anything aesthetically changing on the outside. They may take the top band on the sign. I gave them that option that says Indian Creek on the top. They may take that top band, potentially. My first question to them was, how much noise do you guys make, and what are you doing? So they explained to me that they need a quiet space because if they add music or anything to it, that it has to be added after. So from what I understand, what I'm being told, they don't have bands and stuff playing in there. Everything has to be, and I believe you can attest to this too. So I don't see a noise problem at all. I don't see a parking problem or a usage with too many people in and out. So I think it'd be a really good fit for this space. I think that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Anyone from Black Pigeon here to discuss? No? Okay.
But I just want to say, if there's people from the condo, are you from the condominiums? Okay, that was my first question to them was, are you guys making noise? Because we can't have this noise in here. Is everything going to be inside? They assured there's nothing outside. And the first thing I thought of was, okay, if you make music, you can't do that. No, that's added to the tracks or whatever they do at a later time. So there's not going to be a bunch of bands in there.
It's really quiet. If you guys have ever been,
We wanted to party.
behind like scenes of like making a movie, it's so quiet. It's all action, and then they do all the extras at the end.
Unless you have any questions,
Board members, any questions for them?
Well, I'm still not quite sure what you do there. I mean, I can't hear you very well. Everybody, you're turned the other way. So, tell us a little more what goes on.
well, I think their representative, Mia, can explain a little more than I can because she's more involved with them and she's
Sure.
representing them. Good.
Hi, my name is Mia Watley, and I'm representing Black Pigeons. To answer the question, what they are doing is they are creating movies. So it's a quiet space for them to create the movies, and then they do all the work as it is going to be as an office space as well as creating movies there. I don't know how else to explain it but that.
So it boils down to it's just generally like a film set.
Exactly.
Are you doing commercials and things like that, or what?
No, it's strictly movies. Essentially, if they are going to do commercials, it all depends on where they are at. Right now, it's clients coming out of other states to shoot movies at their studios.
Are there extras that come in to film the movies, or people that come in from the public where it's a call that they would need a lot more people there than just the 4 to 6 employees that you had indicated?
What do you mean by that?
Do you have extras that come in as part of the movies? outside public that would come in to be part of the film as
No,
backdrop?
no.
Okay, what kind of movies are we talking about here? Does this have anything to do with the adult film industry?
No.
you
It's
know-
strictly like action movies. They're trying to bring Grand Rapids to be a more like a film state. As like LA is a big film state. You know, like that's my best explanation for that. There's not going to be anything provocative film there or anything that's going to ruin the reputation of Walker or anything like that.
Why are the hours till 11 p.m. if it's a normal work environment? Just curious.
Clientele, it depends on their scheduling when they're coming in from different places and stuff like that.
So most of the traffic would be at night?
Not,
After 5?
it would be like 5. It depends. It honestly depends on the client's schedules when they're flying in.
Okay.
They're still going to be there from whatever time they're allowed to be there to do like work and editing.
I guess as a follow-up, one of the reasons why I was asking the question on the amount of people is if there's a lot of other people that are coming in as extras on the set, does that create a parking situation?
No. They had a
That-
previous spot in Grand Rapids that they only had 4 parking spots and they never even filled them.
Just tell us what a typical, how long would be a typical movie, I guess that's what it is, and how many people would be in it, and how long it would last, and what the theme would be. Just give us a little rough idea what a typical one would be.
Approximately 8 hours of filming. It could be, trying to think the best way. It will be about 25 people, if not less, maybe more. Depends on what kind of movie they are shooting, what they're going for. As I don't know if you guys know, but they are just starting out, so they're expanding. They're not a big movie company or anything like that.
Now, at this point, we'll open the public hearing, get public comment, and then we can deliberate thereafter.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Support.
Motion by Steve, supported by Jason to open the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. At this point, anyone from the public that has any questions concerning this, you have an opportunity to come forward and give us your name and address and state your concerns.
Hi, my name is Barb Julin. I live behind in Indian Creek condominiums. My address is 2648. I do get packages from at my house because of the same address, but my concern and a lot of my neighbors is the traffic. We have a hard time coming out of our condos onto 3 Mile Road. It's 50 miles an hour. And people come faster than that. And maybe the lights can be coordinated so that we get a break, because if one side's okay, the other side isn't. And that's mostly our concern, is the traffic. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Any questions, comments? Okay, being none.
Support.
Motion by Jason, supported by Steve to close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Could Joe, as a landlord there, what type of, if we could ask, what type of allowances for parking are afforded to this particular portion of the building?
They have, don't quote me on it, but I believe 14 spots right now to use anytime during the day. After 5 o'clock, especially if, I mean, I don't know how they schedule, really don't. Me as their representative, she doesn't actually work for them, so she may not be able to answer perfectly clear. But from what they told me, that they needed 9 spaces would be plenty. They have 14.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we've had concerns about with traffic, and I think that as far as the utilization of the overall buildings, you've got 2 buildings on the property. Are they fully occupied right now?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And even with them fully occupied, before Black Pigeon, we still had plenty of parking.
Okay, all right. So I don't know if the traffic that's concern that's been expressed would necessarily be any more impact with this use added to it than it would as it currently operates. I think when the development came in, that was something that was a concern at that point in time, and I'm not sure if that's an impact that we could associate with this particular tenant going forward.
Yeah, I'd say that this is a pretty low intensity impact relative to the overall traffic on 3 Mile, and understanding the problems that the neighbors do have on 3 Mile. I don't think this is a big factor into that larger picture. I think they're right. There are things that we need to consider along 3 Mile, but I think the use here is not a major contributor to the problem.
So, with that, are there any things that we see as an issue here that we want to take into account as to whether or not to approve this?
Right. My questions were satisfied. I don't think that the building will generate enough, even with the parking situation. There are other places to park on the property. It sounds like landlord's not all that concerned with if they get into a parking situation there. I think it's going to be one-off when that happens, and it's probably after 5 if that does happen. So I don't see that as a issue. The building square footage isn't going to drive where you have an absolutely massive amount of people that go there. So I'm not seeing it. My only other concern was just what kind of movies were being filmed there. We've been assured that it's not the adult film industry, so that was one thing I just wanted to verify.
I think there's legal barriers in the state of Michigan. If there's no one else with concerns, I can make a motion. Okay. For case 22-033, I'll, based on the application material provided, make a motion to approve the special exception use permit for Black Pigeon Studios at 2648 3 Mile Road Northwest, subject to the following conditions and based on the findings of fact noted below. Conditions of special exception use permit approval: all uses and activities associated with the Black Pigeon Studios must be conducted indoors. Exceptions include deliveries, trash removal, and employing guest parking. Hours of movie studio operation are limited between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. Findings of fact per special exception use section 94-250. The establishment, maintenance, location, or operation of the use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public. The use is compatible with the intent of the zoning district and will not change the essential character of the surrounding area. The use will not be injurious to the use or enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes permitted, will not substantially diminish or impair property values within the area, and will not result in any significant adverse impact on the natural environment. The establishment, maintenance, location, or operation of the use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property for uses permitted in that district. Adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary services or facilities have been or will be provided such that the use will not place demands on public services or facilities in excess of capacity, and the use will not, or will in all other respects, conform to the applicable regulation of the zoning district in which it is located, conditions imposed on approval, and all other applicable provisions of law, ordinance, or statute. And that is my motion.
Okay, motion by Steve, support by Jason. Just one thing, in terms of consideration, if we'd want to also reference the representations offered by the applicant's representative during the public hearing as a basis for this approval.
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion and support to conditionally approve this project. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing for case number 22-013 at 2200 Alpine Avenue Northwest. Turn to City Manager Frank Wash, Community Development Director, to introduce this project, please.
Okay, well, we're switching gears here, and this site is proposed, the site exists on Alpine Avenue north of Avistar Parkway. The use that's proposed is a multi-story indoor storage building for U-Haul. I see there's a whole team from U-Haul out here, so I'm not going to get in their way. They can engage in discussion with you folks when it comes to the use and all the particulars. What I would like to do is go through the staff report, and we have the site plan up for a reference. It's a multi-sheet site plan, but I zoomed in just on the general site plan itself, and we can have some comments as we go forward. This is a commercial plan unit development for the Avistar Parkway CPUD. It's the last site that exists in this development, all the way at the northerly edge of the CPUD. To the north, I believe there's a legal office building, and then to the northeast, there's a giant pitch wrecking yard. So I'm not too concerned about the use at all as far as compatibility. The use is allowed in the commercial district as well. So those two boxes are checked fairly quickly. But let me go through my staff report, and then we can have our discussion go forward. So bear with me 1 second while I shift gears here. So here we go. As Terry has already stated, the current address of this property is 2200 Alpine Avenue. A land division is proposed, and I think they are in the process of applying for that, and I asked that we held off on the land division until we see what the Planning Commission does tonight. The proposed property is about 1.3 acres, zoned commercial planned unit development. And you're looking at a final area site plan. So there's a checklist that goes along with the content of a final area site plan. And let's switch forward to the list for staff analysis and recommendations. This is similar to the special exception you just went through as far as procedure goes. You have a public hearing. Planning Commission is the only one who reviews final area site plans, so the City Commission isn't involved with this. So it really comes down to the checklist that's in the zoning code, needs to land on the plan, and then we see what shakes out for the specifics of the use. And here's what we have so far for analysis and recommendations. First of all, Scott Connors has a report dated 10/25/22. I think he has some important items of information for you folks to discuss in that. Item number 2 that I have is the survey sheet seems to show a 40-foot ingress-egress easement that would cut right through this building. There should be discussion on how that would be cleaned up, obviously. That's a remnant back a ways. I believe all the way back to the original redevelopment of this site after the GM plant closed. So that was the early 2000s. That's certainly something that needs to be cleaned up and a potential condition. The FASP labels, anything that's called layout plan or et cetera, should be changed to final area site plan on the plan sheets, because that's what we're looking at here. A project description should be added to sheet T1 that essentially describes the projected or the proposed use of the building and the site. The proposed lot doesn't appear to need any of what we would call a PUD benefit. The lot is more than large enough to be approved as a standalone lot. But whenever looking at a planned unit development, I always bring that up, that they're proposing a division, And if approved, the planning commission would be giving tacit approval for the land division. However, the descriptions for both the new Lot 1 and Lot 2 should be added to the plans as noted. On-site parking and loading is probably the biggest issue for us, and I'll explain why in a nutshell. There's quite a bit of pavement adjacent to Alpine Avenue that you can see on these plans. I think Scott picked this up as well. It's not striped for parking. It can't be rental or items for display. There's a U-Haul site that's just north of here, and this is what I think you should talk over with the applicants. What's the purpose of all that pavement? If it's maneuvering area, that's fine, but it should be labeled as such. And it clearly needs to be stated in the motion to approve that this is not an area for sales and display. The purpose of this site is for an indoor lock and store. We're in court with the indoor storage building down the street because of a similar situation, so I'm trying to prevent that from happening here. So that's a comment. Take it for what it is, but I do request that that paved area either has to be labeled just as maneuvering, or it needs to be striped for parking spaces, and there should be a condition that no sales or display are allowed in this area. The building height is proposed at 42 feet, 35 is standard in commercial. That's something that I think is more than acceptable as a PUD benefit. The ZBA has granted numerous variances to the Avistar Park building for profile films, and I believe that goes up to almost 70 feet. So 42 feet in that part of town is not anything that I would be concerned about, but it should be called out as a PUD benefit on the plan. I don't see anything for trash or loading for a dumpster on the site. If it's all going to be interior, that's fine. It should state that on the plan. If it's going to be exterior, it should be shown, and the box around the dumpster would have to be brick or block. Landscaping, I have a couple of comments about changing the species to autumn blaze maple or red sunset. Underground irrigation should be required at least for the area that's adjacent to Alpine Avenue. If we don't irrigate our landscaping in this climate, it just burns. And then all that money that went into it ends up being wasted. And then we have to go back out and have things replanted. It's a lot easier to just have, especially in an urban setting like this, have very carefully designed irrigation put in. Exterior elevations on sheet A2 should be clearly labeled. You may want to talk about that. I tend to not get too deep into commercial facade design unless we're in Standale, where we may have some different standards. But in this case, it's a standard commercial lot, but you see the facade plans, and they should describe what they're going to build the building out of, at least on the exterior. Signage is going to be limited to non-PUD zoning, unless granted here tonight. So you will see on the model motion, I left a couple of spaces for a ground sign and for wall signs if the applicant's asking for anything above what the ordinance would otherwise allow. And that leads us into the model motion that I'll be glad to talk through you when we get to that point. And I'm going to hand it back so you can have Scott's report.
Okay, any questions for Frank at this point? Frank, with regard to the sign display, has anything been submitted as part of this application to pertain to that?
No. And typically what I try to do is if someone wants something outside of what the standard zoning code will allow, then let's get that taken care of now so we can avoid what we did last month, which was having J&H Oil come in just for a slight addition to a ground sign, because you folks have got a lot on your agendas. So if there's anything that is requested that's reasonable, you can certainly grant that tonight, and it'll save you some time down the road.
Sure, I'll go until I run out of gas and have no voice left. Hopefully I get through. We did not do traditional site plan review on this one, so we have kind of a long list. Apologize for that. I think with the transition with the planning director, it's been tough, and so a little longer here. Frank mentioned the area out front. We want to make sure that that's carefully planned, and the way it's shown, it would be real easy to turn that into U-Haul truck storage, like we have down the street at the old D&W, and we want to make sure there's a purpose for that. So truck turning templates are certainly an important part of this because there's some bays in the front that it looks like are going to be intended for access points like that. And anything that's going to be used for parking should be shown as such. Around the building, if you look to the north, the aisle around the north side was only 20 feet. We recommend that that be upgraded to 24 feet to allow for two-way traffic. You know, with the tight corners, and we see this a lot now, people say, I need a 50-foot driveway to my site. It's the only way it's going to work. But then they end up with like 20-foot aisles around the buildings with 90-degree bends, and that'll all be fine. But I think in this case, we know that it's got to be a little wider than that if we're going to expect vehicles going both ways. And because this is part of a larger PUD and there's cross access throughout, it absolutely should be 24 feet, or at least we recommend that you consider that. The east and the north elevation of the buildings show some overhead doors, and there's a stone strip around the east side, and then landscaping and a stone strip on the north side. So that really doesn't fit with the overhead doors. I think they're going to talk a little bit more about that, whether they're cosmetic or whether they're going to eliminate them altogether. So they'll hopefully touch on that. Some traditional stuff, like we need to have the sidewalk grades every 50 feet. If you look at the contours, it was very difficult to tell where the water was going. And we don't want to mess that up along Alpine Avenue. We want that to be done correctly. The existing survey is a little bit complex. It was done by somebody from out of state, and there were some discrepancies on there with a couple different things. There's an existing storm sewer that the design engineer thinks is out there that was not shown on the survey, and so they've rightfully drawn it on their plans and are showing a relocation. But if it's out there, we expect it to be within an easement because it provides drainage from other lots. So we want that to be followed up on and make sure that it's cleaned up and they don't end up with an easement under a building later that turns into a big issue. And then there was an unknown utility that was shown through the middle of where the building would be that was not addressed in the design drawing. So another thing that needs to be cleaned up. Cross-access easements also, the neighbors to the south all have those. We would expect that to be around this building as well. And then finally, in my last gasp of air, there will be a stormwater permit, and we're working through the conditions of that, but I think we don't get into all of the detail until it gets through Planning Commission, because there's obviously minor changes that occur.
Thanks, Scott. Any questions for Scott? Okay, thank you. The applicant, representative, come forward, please, and offer your introduction on the project, please.
Good evening. My name is John Gilmore. I am the president of U-Haul of Northern Michigan. I will and already do oversee the operations of the existing store there on Alpine and many others here in the state of Michigan. So I'm a Walker resident myself. I live about 2 miles down the road here. So a couple of things that were brought up there that I want to address. First and foremost, we are U-Haul. We are corporately owned U-Haul. We're not franchised, so we are a corporate owned location. The location there at the corner of Hillside and Alpine, we've been here for about 40 years. We are in the self-storage business, and we don't currently offer self-storage at our Alpine location. Our customers need to travel across town to the other end of Grand Rapids, southeast side, southwest side. That's the only place they can go. So we're very excited to be able to offer this to the Northwest residents, as it's something that we've been lacking for quite a long time. So we're very excited about the site. It's definitely an interesting site. We're very excited about where it's at, but it does have its quirks, and we've done our best to try to work around those quirks as best we can. Obviously, there was a few things here that you called out that we want to address tonight. First and foremost, on the site plan there, in terms of parking, we have no plans, and we are more than willing to agree to it being written in there that our trucks will not be parked here for display. They're not going to be there to rent. That's all taken care of just up the road. I mean, we're not looking to expand that. We've got plenty of room there at Hillside and Alpine. This is strictly to add the additional service of storage for our customers. Now, our trucks may be on site unloading, but they will not be parked there. Once they're done unloading, they are returned to Alpine and Hillside. So that is not even a concern of ours. We're more than willing to agree to that being written in there, that these will not be displayed or parked here with any length of time, unloading only. The other thing to address is on the site plan there, we do need a certain amount of turning radius to safely get the trucks in and out of the building here. So that's why there's no called out parking along the front there. This is our area for our trucks to be able to access and in and out safely without running into anyone's car or having to move around that. So that's, and we can certainly add that to the site plan so it will be called out and addressed on there, the turning radius that is required. And that's why we don't see any additional parking on there. The 24-foot drive at the north side of the lot, what our plan is, we've obviously had these notes, so we plan to address that by relocating the building a little further south to kind of close off that area to the south there and put it to the property line, giving us that 4 feet without having to reduce the footprint of the building, but without restricting any access. So we'll get that 24-foot drive at the top on the north side by just kind of moving it down on the south side. And we will eliminate the stone that's along there as well. Oh, I'm sorry, eliminate the building. I apologize. We'll eliminate the stone at the top. I misunderstood that. So, yeah, it will be 24 feet. Cross easement access will be allowed. We'll, as it exists now, that won't be a concern. There were some other easements on the property, and I believe we are working through to get those taken care of. We don't expect to have an issue with those. I'm not sure if you have access to this. I think we sent this all along, but this is the preliminary imaging of the building. This white door right here, I know it's not called on our site plan, we will correct that. That is the dumpster access room. So that is where the dumpster will be located. It will only be wheeled outside on those days in which the dumpster is being emptied and then returned to the interior of the building at any time not. So there will be no dumpster sitting outside, save for the days that it is being emptied. And I think that addresses most of what was brought up. If there was anything I forgot, here to answer questions.
The other 3 red doors next to the dumpster, are those?
Architectural design. They are not, they're an engineering part of the building. They're just aesthetic. They serve no purpose other than just to, they're part of the engineering. They are not access doors. They're part of the facade.
Are they actual doors that are on the facade, or are they painted or some sort of graphic?
It's sheet metal. No access. There's no cut hole. It's just literally, I don't know if you've been to any of other facilities in town here, but you can kind of see them like we bought the Kmart on 68th Street, and along the side of the building we just put them on there. It's recognition. Short of that, it's hard to determine what a building is, and so it's part of our business model is that those doors bring recognition to what the product is inside, but they serve no other purpose other than that. So they are necessary for our business plan, but they are not access doors. So they will not be anything where a customer will be able to walk up, go through those. It is literally just sheet metal. So on the exterior of the facade of the building.
How many units will be in this facility?
So as it sits right now, the plan calls for just short of 700, but it is kind of a plan in motion as we kind of work through some things here. That can go up or down depending on things that we have to work through, but our hope would be somewhere in that range.
Is there a shared parking agreement with the neighboring properties that we know of on this? And the only reason I'm asking is with 700 units, I realize that people kind of go there and then
Sure.
they come and go, but at some point I would think there'd be a few cars sitting there.
In all honesty, we have the same amount of units at our 68th Street location, and we have no problem. There are 2 bays that will be interior access bays where you actually pull your vehicle right inside the building. And so predominantly that's where people will access. And then the 5 spaces that are called out in front of the building, we have the same setup out at 68th Street, and we never experience a problem. People just don't, I mean, they move in and very infrequently access. We are a very low impact business in terms of storage. So very rarely will we ever fill the spots that we have there. And in which case, if we did, we can stripe some additional spots on the front there for additional parking, as long as it doesn't affect our turning radiuses that we need. But we're more than willing to add some additional striped parking along the front there to accommodate should that ever happen, but we don't foresee it. It's just a very low impact business. It doesn't have a lot of need for parking. And so it's not a concern to us, but we want to address any concerns that you do have.
do we want to take this opportunity to open the public hearing?
That's a good idea.
All right, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Steve, supported by Scott to open the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Anyone here that would like to speak to this project?
I will make a motion.
Okay.
I will make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Steve, supported by Scott to close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Just to clarify on the fake doors, so to speak, that applies not just on the front on Alpine, but on the other sides of the building. Is that correct?
Yes, yep. The only access doors that are actually true to access are the ones located on the front building, the one that is for the dumpster, and the two that are access for interior access. Everything else is static, so those will not be functional. All of our units are accessed from the interior of the building only. No unit will have special access from the outside. Everyone has the same access, all inside.
Okay. If I'm reading it correctly, do you actually have 4 levels where you're going to have space for storage? I see there's a lower level.
Yes, yep,
So that is the case then.
yep. There will be an elevator access to all levels, so it will be not a whole lot of windows in the building, so you'd never be able to tell the difference between if you were in the lower level or the upper levels. So it's all going to be about the same.
Okay. Sign display, are you aware of what the standard allowances are, and are you looking for anything in excess of that?
We're not really looking for anything in excess, but we did want to call out that we would like a monument sign. So we are looking to have a monument sign here.
Could we define monument sign? Is it a pylon sign or? Yeah, typically our procedure for CPUDs along the Alpine corridor is that you're allowed, as the other sites in the CPUD, a ground-mounted sign, and the standard for that is 6 feet tall, 48 square feet of area, 18-inch masonry base. If there's a place where they can put a larger sign or a ground-mounted sign, that'd be my recommendation to you. And that we're trying to get away from pylon signs as things redevelop on Alpine Avenue.
And we're fine with a ground mount sign, a monument on the ground. We don't need a full sign. We're good.
So just for the record, 6 feet tall, 48 square feet area, 18-inch masonry base.
I think that is something we're very comfortable with.
Okay. And then wall signage would only be allowed on the side that faces Alpine Avenue. Okay.
And what's the area of that, allowable area?
Well, it depends on it's the length of the wall that faces Alpine Avenue north to south, or it is 80 square feet maximum. So they've got quite a bit of wall signage. Typically what we'll see is that a site like this may want wall signage, in this case on the south wall. To the north you really can't see it, but south it'll be very apparent. So, but if they don't want it, that's fine. It'll just be what's allowed by code for both ground sign and wall signage.
Okay.
We do, and we're within that. We do have directional signage that would not fall within that.
We tend to give a lot of latitude for directional signage.
And that's the majority of our signage is directional. So
Yeah.
outside of that, I think we're comfortable with what is allowed.
Yeah, we don't. The only reason we even get into directional signage is usually for a drive-through that's a national chain, and they'll want to put their sign and the logo, and that's great. We need to get people safely in and out of sites. But interior to the site, all of the directional signs that go up, we don't get involved with those. That's up to the applicant.
So if I could ask a pointed question, in terms of, we've got recommendations from both the engineer and the planning director, community development director. Do you have any issue with any of those conditions that have been set forth?
At this point, I don't believe that we do. I don't think anything on the report is anything that we can't accommodate. Everything is in line with what we want to accomplish here, and we want to
Very good.
I'm concerned about the parking stripes along Alpine, because if you, I think it reads that, you know, you're recommending them. If you put them in, the trucks won't be able to make the turn.
And that is where I clarified that we put that turn radius in, but we are willing to strike some maybe to the north there where it's outside the radius.
Yeah.
The full 14, I believe, is what was asked, we probably would not be able to do just because of the turning radius. But we are willing, so north of where our axis is, we can strike, it looks like probably five spots. And that's, the gas.
Yeah. And
If the concern is for the trucks, we can label that maneuverability, so that takes away the fear, it sounds like, of having for sale trucks or trucks stationed there for display. We can add that to the site plan. We have no intent of having trucks there, we don't need it. It actually would cause our business disruption by doing that.
And I can definitely put turning radiuses on there so everybody can see, you know, how they look.
I think that's fair, if they actually show the truck turning templates on the site plan, and then they can stripe whatever's outside of the templates. I think that's a fair solution. And again, the note should be added to the plan, no sales or rental displays are allowed. And if they can put that as a note right on the plan, then I think that should solve that problem.
Are you good with us just noting that parking to be resolved at staff level?
Yeah, that's fine. And from a technical standpoint, we'll want to see the turning templates, stripe what they can per code outside of the templates, and put a note on the plan that, yeah, no displays, no rentals. And then we're good. We've got enough, there's enough rails on that where we can get that solved pretty easily.
Any other comments or concerns?
I'm having heartburn on the amount of parking, given that there's 700 units.
I can speak to that a little
I'm
bit
just,
more.
I think the project is great. I think it fits. And I don't have any issues there. I'm just nervous having 700 units.
Yeah, I mean,
Sir, could you come up to the mic?
What happens when it's a Saturday, a bunch of college movement, or I don't know what their busy times would be. If there was a ability to have cross parking agreements or something like that, I'd be a little more comfortable. I don't want to discourage the project either, so I do want to move forward.
So
I just don't know how. Yeah, maybe you can help with getting it.
I can, Jason. So my name is Jeff Stefani. I'm the Area District Vice President. I run Michigan, Indiana. So I wish I had that problem at every one of my stores, because that would mean I would be full at every store. So I'm not going to per se that we have scheduled times with our customers, but we do. We're all sharing the same vehicles. It is not, from an everyday standpoint, I don't have probably more than 2 or 3 customers on site at a time. A lot of these people come, they don't visit their stuff. They come, they drop it off, they go. I know what you're saying with the 700 units, but I don't experience that at any of my stores. We don't have people waiting. We don't have people waiting for a parking spot. It just doesn't happen. I wish it did, because that would be a good problem for us to have. But these people store, the average tenant right now is somewhere between 6 and 8 months is the average. They drop off, they go. They don't come back until it's time to either upgrade their house, apartment, what have you. So we don't run into that issue. We really don't. We do show 5 or 6 spots. It's plenty. It would be a miracle for those all to be full at the same time. Plus, we're really relying on our facility down the street with our traditional truck rental. We only have so many, and those times are scheduled with the customers when they can actually utilize them. So I hope that satisfies you, Jason, but it's really not. It's just not a reality for our business.
If I may, just from a practical standpoint, when I went out to the site, and granted it was during the middle of the week, that parking lot due east is wide open and empty. And I think practically speaking, if they did run into a circumstance where they didn't have enough parking on site, it would actually be preferable that they'd park there as opposed to the adjoining spaces, retail spaces where they're probably have more of a premium for their parking needs. So maybe they have, practically speaking, an option if that, according to him, would be a very rare time that they'd have full use of the parking.
That's why I was kind of going after is there a shared parking? So that wasn't available.
Yeah.
The only other concern that I would have with that, and it can be solved by putting parking spaces along Alpine there, is if some reason they decided that they no longer wanted this building, and then somebody else goes in, you've got a 4-story, well, 3-story, but with a lower level, that could generate a fair amount of people that would work there, or if they decide, if somewhere along the way this turned into something else, then you've got an issue of, okay, how are you going to park many people around this? And granted, you can park along Alpine, but that's where I kept thinking, okay, is there a backup plan? And I agree with you that you could just park over there. So that's where my head's at. But like I said, I think it's a great project, and I'm in favor of moving forward with it.
Well, if it makes you feel better, we don't sell. So it's our building. I mean, we invest. So this is going to be $10 million, $12 million, probably all said and done. I'm not looking to build someone else a building. This is for us. And I would, if we ever did, I'm sure they would have to sit down and talk to you guys about parking at that time. So, but we just don't sell.
To kind of bookend on what Jeff was saying here, I believe, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but there are a change of use of the building if we were to ever sell, which would never happen, but if it did, I believe there's already methods in place to control that. A change of use of the building would mean it would have to come back in front of the city to address these kind of concerns at that point. So there are already safeties in place to prevent the concern that you have from ever being a reality. Short of this just staying as self-storage, in which case the parking needs would not change. So if we were to sell it and it stays self-storage, parking needs wouldn't change. If it were sold, become an office, it's a change of use. City has to say yes or no and approve a site plan. So the security is there already to address that.
That's correct. Whenever uses change, part of the building permit process or what have you is a zoning review. So the use is checked against the parking code. So say that 10 years from now or whatever, that site wants to turn into apartments, which I think is reasonable. If you look down the street, what's going on in Grand Rapids, not very far from here, then obviously they would need to come up with a revised parking plan. They would have to buy additional property or lease it or what have you. So that is a correct statement.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Al? Anyone?
Well, I like the trees. The red sunsets are real pretty. They're the bright red ones, and the autumn blaze are a little more orange, but they grow very rapidly. I'm finding quite a few of those. You want to keep them wrapped because they can split as they get older, but those are fast-growing trees. They're fun to have in your yard. You'll love them. The other stuff, I have no idea. Trees, yeah, I got that stuff.
All right.
Okay. If everyone's good, I can make a motion here. For case 22-013, I'll make a motion to approve the final area site plan for the U-Haul interior access self-storage building on a proposed lot within the Avastar Park CPUD, subject to the following conditions and based on the findings of fact noted below. Conditions of final area site plan approval. The applicant agrees to all conditions noted in the city engineer's letter dated 10/25/22. Applicant agrees to all the conditions noted in the community development department's letter dated 10/25/22. The entire paved area facing Alpine Avenue must be clearly delineated or I guess the parking issues will be resolved at staff level per the conversation that's been had at the planning commission level. Wall signage area cannot exceed what is conventionally allowed by the code. One ground-mounted sign is allowed adjacent to Alpine Avenue per the code standards. And 3 hard copy sets plus all plan sheets and PDF must be delivered to the Community Development Department prior to the issuance of building permits. Findings of fact per section 94-213, noise, odor, light, and other external effects, including traffic stacking and traffic congestion from the U-Haul project, will not adversely affect adjacent lots or uses. The location of the proposed U-Haul project, layout of the site plans, and the project's relation to the public and private streets and service drives giving access to it will... Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I say will or will not correctly. Will be such that traffic to, from, and within the site and assembly of persons in connection therewith will not be hazardous, detrimental, or inconvenient to the Avistar Park CPUD, the public, or the surrounding area. In applying the standard, the Planning Commission has considered convenient routes for pedestrian traffic, the relationship of the proposed project to Alpine Avenue and street/service drive intersections, and the general character and intensity of the existing and potential development of the Avistar Park CPUD and the surrounding area. The U-Haul project would not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the Avistar Park CPUD and surrounding property for uses permitted in applicable zoning districts, and the affected public services and facilities, including public streets such as Alpine Avenue, Avistar Parkway, and private service drives in the Avistar Park CPUD, would be capable of accommodating increased services and facility loads caused by the proposed U-Haul project. And the U-Haul FASP, as submitted, remains in substantial compliance with the previously approved Avistar Park CPUD PASP.
Okay, we have a motion by Steve.
One point of clarification,
Yes,
that only a ground-mounted sign will be allowed, not a pylon sign.
correct.
Supported by Jason. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
I look at this parking lot every day, so I'm psyched to have it not be the parking lot it currently is.
Oh,
We try.
Yeah.
We try.
The storage is appealing when I look into my basement to see how I use that.
You gotta apply the minimalistic attitude though. If I'm gonna store it for 8 months, why am I storing and paying for it?
Yep.
Sell it, eBay.
All 16, all the 7 buildings.
Wife makes money about $2,000 a year selling stuff on Facebook.
All of those, all 7 of those buildings, including the towers, were on 16 acres of property.
16 acres.
Didn't it have 2 zip codes?
Wow.
Boy, that is different than how we use property here.
Yeah, where you don't have land, it's at a premium, and it's amazing. I often freak people out by telling them that the standard platted lot size in Chicago, city of Chicago, 25 feet wide by 125 feet long. And people,
25 feet wide.
yeah, and people will say, how do you build a house on there? Well, everything, it's like a big puzzle. So the lots are 25 feet and homes are designed to land on that. On one lot line, they're pretty much on the lot line, and the other lot line, you've got 3 feet of setback. So by the time you put 2 buildings together, you can put what we call a gangway, which is a walkway between the 2 buildings. And the density is probably 16 units per acre or more for single family. So it all depends on how much land you have to work with.
We're not creative enough around here.
Well, we would be if we had to be. The closest, and that's really prescriptive land use planning. They plat out entire neighborhoods of 50,000 people. It's just different around here. Would you like a quick update so we can all go home and get out of here on a beautiful night? Okay, let's see. Jason, I'll have the 1019 PC minutes for you at the next meeting. That was my oversight, so we'll get those to you. And the next meeting will be on 11/16, 2 weeks from tonight. And you'll have two items on the agenda. One is a little bit similar to that special land use for the movie studio today. It's at 3 Mile Road across the street from the Army Reserve Center, another Joe Halligan building. A development called Third Coast Motors wants to do an indoor auto auction there. Same concerns. If it's all in the building, no problem. If it bleeds outside, those kind of uses can really get out of control pretty quickly. So they're proposing everything indoor, but we'll go through the process and see if you're willing to give them the permit. The other item will be more a traditional site plan review for another big industrial building by Honeycrisp, and that is on vacant property north of Denon Steel. That property was originally kind of kicked off for development in the late 90s, and then nothing happened to it. And these folks have picked it up, and they're proposed to put a big industrial building on there.
North of Denon Steel. Okay.
North of Denon Steel, that's a flag lot. So you can see it from the expressway pretty easy. You can see a fire hydrants in with a water line and all that, and that's been there for years. There's ponds on the property, so the site plan will be a little bit complex, but at the end of the day, we think it should be okay for a big industrial building. And then you'll have two meetings in December. Your first meeting on the 7th will be for Vista 45. They'll be coming back. I don't really know. We'll try and shape that up so it's a productive discussion for you folks. And then on 12/21, we have one project in so far, which is a small multifamily development at the southwest corner of Lake Michigan Drive and Maynard, right at the BRT stop. So because it's at the BRT stop, this developer is saying, can I get 30 units in there? So it's not a huge development. 30 units adjacent to the BRT stop, which from a staff perspective, the first thing you'll hear us say is, when we were developing the Laker Line BRT plan, we strategically put the stops in where we wanted to put some density in to maximize the bus rapid transit. So this one fits. It's just a smaller scale project.
What corner? Maynard and Lake Michigan Drive?
Southwest corner.
Southwest.
Yep, that's still in Walker, right on the line. So right behind the BRT stop, they own two pieces of property there.
Just a little bit low and swampy.
The south half is all underwater. So this is more of a cluster design, which we're all for, but it's only 30 units. I think it's 5-6 unit buildings, so it's not just a mass building.
I like these smaller multifamilies, like what we did on 4 Mile,
Like that.
stuff like that. It's kind of nice to break up these massive monster multifamily projects with some things like this.
A little bit more pedestrian scale. The guy who's doing this, his name is Joe Moderman, and if you're a basketball fan around here, you remember Big Joe from Allendale. He played for Iowa State, so the dude was a good player. And then he played pro for a while in Europe, and now he's in the land development business, so you'll see him. And then last but not least, certainly, we hired a new planner. Her name is Paula Preby. She's currently up in Big Rapids. She's an AICP with 10 years of experience, which is great. And she's also worked for the city of Milwaukee, so she has big city experience. And she also worked for a regional government in north of Milwaukee in Wisconsin. So she's got, and she up in Big Rapids, she's big into the rental housing program they have, which we're eventually going to need here as we continue to age and add multifamily. So she, I think, is a good hire for the city. We were very deliberate with this one, and we had some good applicants, but I think she was by far the best. She will be starting either mid-December or after the first of the year because she has a lot of affairs to get in order with a move. And until then, and even after then, I will certainly help out at the planning commission level.
How old a person is this?
Well, technically, we're not supposed to get into that. Yeah, that's.
Well, I mean, has she been around the block a few times?
She's a 10-year.
Come on.
No. 10 years as an AICP. So that means she's really experienced in a broad spectrum. That's what we were looking at, because every day here you deal with things from an agricultural pole barn to a major industrial development. So you need to be broad brush, but still an expert with qualifications, and she is. So there we go.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can't say that either.
Packers fan.
Packers fan. There you go.
All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We adjourn. Thank you.
If anybody has any questions about the next development next week, I may not be there, so call me or email me.
He'll be all right.
Well, I've had 8 COVID tests in 10 days, and they're all negative.
Why do you think I've had 5 shots? Because he's always.
This is my fall allergy right before hunting season.